Everyone. Welcome to Wine and Culture, where we talk about the joys of wine in various cultures. I'm Trudy Hanna, owner and founder of Pie Imports. In celebration of Black History Month, we will be exploring African Americans in the wine industry. Located in Atlanta, Georgia, Buckhead Wine Cellars offers full service, climate controlled wine storage and cellar management services to wine enthusiasts and collectors throughout the southeastern United States. John Hall, owner and operator, is a veteran in the wine business, having owned a wine retail store in Georgia. Mr. John and his team are instrumental in supporting and mentoring other African American wine importers, distributors, and enthusiasts through their transportation and logistics, inventory management, and wine storage services. We have here with us the owner and operator of Buckhead Wine Cellars. Let us welcome John Hall. John, thank you for gracing this episode here on YouTube. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Trudy. Thank you for having me on.
Can you share with us something about yourself and your role at Buckhead Wine Cellars?
My role, like this, something about myself. I got in the wine industry, 2005, 2006. Came out of corporate finance and strategic planning and with Georgia Pacific, and opened a wine retail shop over in Emmett Park prior to the Beltline coming in. And so I was kind of a little ahead of my time over there, but had the retail shop for about 5 years. And subsequently, in 2009, I opened the first location of Buckhead Wine Cellars, which was then called Buckhead Wine Storage, over off of Maple Drive, behind world famous Bones Restaurant. So we were there for about 10 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We were there for about 10 years. And at the time when we opened, we were the first wine only storage facility in the state of Georgia. And grew that facility. Subsequently, the lease expired and we were there for 10 years. Actually maxed the facility out like around 2015 and opened the West Side location, which I'm talking to you from currently, in 2016, and then subsequently closed the Maple Drive location. We rebranded ourselves Buckhead Wine Cellars at the time. And so now we have close to 25,000 square feet of refrigerated storage for enthusiasts, collectors, and investors. And so my role is, I got multiple hats. You know how it is.
Business owners,
you kind of do what you got to do. Primarily what I do is I handle our logistics. We move private wine collections locally and throughout the Southeast, and we actually ship across country from time to time. And so we're a white glove service. We do soup to nuts. We'll do everything from coming to your home, package your collection, palletize your collection, store your collection, ship your collection across country or across town, depending on what the need might be. And we'll do everything from inventory to evaluations. We offer our clients here at Buckhead Wine Cellars proof of provenance, which is becoming more and more critical relative to how is your wine being kept, especially if it's in that investment kind of category where folks are looking to take it to auction at some point in time. And so these are kind of the things that we do both internally and within the logistics business. And so I got a hand in kind of a little bit of hand in all of it, primarily the logistics and, that and networking. I continue to network as we sell out the rest of our storage space. So, I'm in sales. I'm the rainmaker, so to speak. So I got to make sure it keeps raining so we can keep on trucking. So that's my job.
Wow, I hear that. So, John, winemaker Phil Long, president of the Association of African American Vineyards, AAAV, in
Mm-hmm.
2020 estimated that about 1% of all winemakers are Black. He said that in 2020 that there were a few dozen who were both the winemaker and the brand owner. 1% of US winemakers and brand owners are actually Black. Also, I was reading an article from Advisor Wine Industry
Mm-hmm.
Network from July 2021, where the article titled Groundbreaking Study of Black Business Owners in the Wine Industry reveals the immediate need for inclusion and equality. There was a study that was done by the Terroir Nord 2020 study of Black wine entrepreneurs survey respondents, answered multiple questions related to their motivation for wine entrepreneurship, experience with racism and other challenges, perceptions of wine industry's inclusion efforts, business strategy and practices, and the impact of COVID-19. Black-owned wineries account for less than 1% of all US wineries, while Black people typically make up more than 10% of American wine consumers. A majority of survey participants, 43%, which represent wineries and other wine businesses, report that financial capital is a primary business roadblock to their business. Bias, racism was cited by 20% as the number one challenge in general for Black wine businesses. Furthermore, than half of the respondents are neutral for or disagree that the wine industry is taking meaningful action to be more inclusive of underrepresented groups. John, what are your views on the lack of representation of African Americans in the wine business?
That is sad. I mean, I think that's where you start with is just, my overall impression that is sad, but it's the reality that we live in. We're I don't think the wine industry is atypical relative to any
Right.
other industry. I worked in building products for 14 years with Georgia Pacific. I don't think there is one. I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure there isn't because there aren't any minority owners of any of the building supply, you name it, whether it's cement, whether it's whatever, nails. Um, so that's not atypical. But speaking relative to our industry, in particular, I think not a lot has been done, and it's kind of hard to lay the focus where it is because the industry is so fragmented. You got so
Mm-hmm.
many wineries, um, you got importers, you got distributors. I mean, who do you go to unless you go to, Constellation Brands or somebody like that
Exactly.
who
Mm-hmm.
controls, big segments of the market. But even with their control of the market, they don't control, 25, 50, 60% where they can, where if what they say so, things can happen. So that kind of hurts relative to just that fragmentation is like, where do you go to apply pressure in order to get more access?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, money is the mother's milk of entrepreneurship. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
when you get denied, access to resources in order to pull things off, then it limits you. What I found is that as we gain access to resources, we can be as or more successful than just about anybody else. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so individually, what can we do? Well, do
Yeah.
what I've tried to do in a microcosm, which is support Black entrepreneurs, folks that want to get into the business. I mean, I've had conversations with yourself,
Yes.
with other Black importers that are in here, going soup to nuts. How do you get set up? What do you need? State licensing, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason I'm kind of free with that information is because they try to make it more problematic than it really is, but it's
Right.
really not that difficult. If you just know the steps of what you need to do, then it simplifies the process for you getting in. So that's that barrier entry. I'm not seeing as much pushback on. the barrier to entry that I've seen on this end, from my standpoint, it's just been getting into distribution. The whether big or small, it doesn't really matter. And some of it is, there's not a racial component to it. It's just a matter of fit and size and what's in somebody's portfolio to some extent. And then race does enter into it to some extent, because now you could be creating competition for yourself, or so you're trying to, so that's the one area where I think you could get, if we had better representation. I mean, you would think here in Georgia, I think there's only, Trudy, correct me, are you a distributor? I don't know. You're just an importer, correct?
I'm an importer distributor, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're one, and then there's another guy who's here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brand War. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I first got into the business, there was another minority distributor, but they subsequently went out of business. And so there haven't been that many as far as in the distribution channel. So then, that's another barrier. And then the final barrier is, getting on retail shelves, once you get the distribution. But, you got options now. You can go direct to consumer. You can bypass. You can build your network that way, though it takes a little while longer, especially for the wineries out there in Napa. It takes a little while longer, but the flip side is you get to keep most of your money because you don't have to cut everybody in on the margins. So, and I think between the meltdown back in 2008, 9, and 10, and the pandemic, I think has strengthened that business model as far as how folks are approaching the market. Now, having said that, it's still kind of wide open. People got to find you to know you. And so how do you do that? How do you gain that kind of exposure? And I guess one way is, what you're doing, Trudy. There are, many opportunities out there given social media and things of that nature in order to expand into marketplaces and get connected to people who are looking to buy your product. My whole thing is I'm kind of an enthusiast, collector, investor myself, and I like good wine. And so, there are folks who I buy from, Black-owned vineyards, J. Moss, Theopolis.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. My guy, football, Charles Woodson.
Right.
Yeah. And so, and they're, they I like them because they actually own, either they have long-term contracts with, they play the game like it's supposed to be played. Either you own your own vineyards or you have long-term contracts, so you can, you have a secure source of grapes in order to produce fantastic wines. And so that's paramount to success. So, but yeah, it is a capital intensive business. That part of it, especially on the winery end of it. And so I could see that being that's a whole nother, that's a discussion in and of itself. We won't kind of get into that too deep today, but because that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it's definitely capital intensive. Well, when you think about, wine to produce, let's say, good grape growing, good wine growing grapes, let's say that.
Right.
Wine growing grapes, from the plant to when you start and really produce that, it's about 10 years, 7 to 10 years. And so, you got to have the wherewithal to either just sell the fruit and use that to cash flow yourself, plus enough, of working capital and retain earnings, in this case, not retain earnings, but just money to be able to sustain yourself until you get to the point where you're actually growing and producing grapes that you can now put in a bottle. So that's a whole nother discussion in and of itself. The industry is broad enough, is big enough. I think there's enough room, suffice to say, I've been first in a lot of things, the first to integrate my junior high school, the first to, I've been in a lot of meetings where I've been the only Black guy in the room. And so,
Right.
and so in this industry, yeah, I'm pretty sure in wine storage, I'm the only Black guy doing this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and not to say that it is unique or anything. It's just, you know, that's kind of, you know, somebody was willing to take a chance on kind of the business model of, you know, is there a need, and is there a need? Can you fulfill that need, and do it in such a way that people will like want, you know, you to, and they trust you to take care of their luxury goods for the most part. So for me, it was just a true entrepreneurial thing. I saw a need, felt that I could fill that need. I'd seen wine storage. I lived in California back in the 80s, so I've seen it. And you know, when I was in the wine industry, when I got into the retail, I just looked at, okay, well, what else can I do, you know, within the industry? And this was just one of those things. And that was on my, like, yeah, okay, we can do this. And the opportunity presented itself, and here we are.
Right. Very well put, John. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when people ask me that question, like, how did you get into wine? I was like, well, how could anybody get into wine? I mean, come on. It's not something that you do because it's like, oh, it's a legacy or a heritage thing. It's just because you just like to drink wine.
Yeah.
And and that was more so my take on it. And that leads to, you kind of alluded to the next question that I have, and we can kind of discuss this, together. But when you look at, you look at exploring businesses, and given the lack of African Americans representation in the business, why did you do that? Why did you go into wine? And it's like I was just saying, I did it because I like it. It wasn't because I was looking at, oh, I could make so much money in this and I can be famous, or a famous importer or so forth. It was just, I like wine. I like talking to the suppliers. I like talking to the retailers or the restaurant owners, and bridging that gap between what the suppliers or the winemaker's vision is for their wines, and what the retailer or the restaurant owner has for their vision of the food or the service that they're trying to provide, and bridging that gap. So that was kind of like my story. If you don't mind explaining a little more, your interest of coming into the wine industry, given the lack of African American representation. What prompted you to do this?
Interesting. I mean, if I was to tell you, there's two versions of the story. There's the real version, and there's the sanitized version. I can give you the okay. I'll just allude to the real version.
Right.
The real version, yeah. I back in high school, when all your buddies are drinking beer, and you're 17, 18, and everybody's kind of like, yeah. So that's back in the 70s for me. And so, yeah, I mean, all my buddies were drinking beer, and I just know, I mean, there's beer. I like beer. It's okay. But when they were drinking beer, I was drinking cheap wine, and I could still remember all the names of them. If I can go through the list, but it'll definitely date me, because I'll be naming stuff that may or may not be on the shelf anymore, but still. So that's kind of what my first, when I think about it, when I first really just kind of got into it. And so then I said this earlier, but I lived out in California for about a year. I was moving from one company to another, and I was living in Dallas, Texas, and the company hired me was based out of San Mateo, and they were moving their corporate headquarters to Norcross. So they interviewed me for the position, and I wasn't supposed to move until the headquarters actually moved. So I was going to move from Dallas to Georgia, back to Atlanta. And this is where I went to grad school, my wife and I both, and her people from Savannah. So we were trying to get back this way. So anyway, we after about a month after they announced that they were changing the corporate headquarters from San Mateo to Norcross, Georgia, the office, the department I was going to move into, just about all of them up and left. So,
Wow.
about a month after we had this discussion, I accepted the offer, and on things were going to happen, like, in about a year, they called me up and said, hey, how would you like to come out here and go to work now? It's like, yeah, cool. I hadn't been to the West. I mean, I've been to the West Coast, but I had never lived out there. And then I figured, so they set us up in, my wife and I, my son was not quite a year old yet. They put us in Mary Student Housing there at Stanford University. And so, I would take 280 East into San Mateo. Oh man, it was just, I still remember the fog rolling back and the birds flying overhead. And I had a 900S Saab with a sunroof, and I'd open.
Oh, wow.
Every morning was just like, oh man, this is heaven. I said, this is why people live out here. So now that I'm there, I'm like, okay, Napa, there's wine country all over the place. So my wife had a real good friend of hers, Willie, and Willie lived over in Marin County. And my first excursion into Napa, he took me on a tour that I actually, whenever people tell me they're going to Napa for the first time, I basically give them, these are the wineries you need to go see.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I always, you take them to what is it? Is it Gallo? Who makes Gallo? What's the name of the guys? I can't remember the name of the.
Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
It'll come to you later.
It'll come to me later. So yeah. So anyway, I take them on the same kind of, here's the itinerary for your first trip, because part of it is historical. Because when you go to the winery, God, I can't think of the guy's name now. Now, see, now I'm frustrated. Continuum, I can look it up real quick. Mondavi.
Oh, yeah.
Mondavi.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
I always take people and I start them in Mondavi, and I tell them this: do two things. When you go to Mondavi, go ahead and pay the upcharge for the premium stuff that you're going to taste, because other stuff you can just get. I mean, you want to taste the stuff that they,
Right.
If you go to a winery, you want to taste the best of what they got.
Right. You want to taste what they're not putting on the shelf.
Right. The stuff that there's limited supply of, and they're only serving it at the winery tile. You can only buy it at the winery. And so, but yeah, you get, they take you into the caves, and they tell you how the Chinese and the Black folks, built out the caves by, boring into the mountains and all that good stuff. And so you get a pretty good history of Napa Valley, before Napa really became Napa. And so start people there, and then you do lunch at VS Atui, and the wine there is good, but they pretty much sell what they sell right there in Napa. You don't ever see it on any store shelves, and they do light varietals like Chardonnay. I think they do a Sauv Blanc. I know they do a Gamay. And it's just a great place to go, because you can sit outside they got these big old trees, and they got picnic tables, deli, and so you can go, you can have lunch. So you do that, and you do Via Satui, and then maybe you pick one other place that you want to go to, and that's pretty much it for your first day or two. And that kind of gives you a feel for Napa, and kind of sets the foundation for when you come back. Because now you kind of know what's going on, and you're willing to do some more things and really explore Napa. And let's not even talk about Sonoma, which is bigger than Napa. And then you get into Anderson Valley and down to Carmel Valley, and there's a bunch of places you can go just in Northern California. And so, I mean, I say these things because I've actually been to pretty much all these places at some point in time.
Right.
But I've been going back to, I have to get a Napa fix at least once every 2 years now. So I've been going to Napa. I've gone to Napa more times than I can count, to be honest with you. And every time it's a different experience, and I love it. Being part of the trade, you get treated a whole lot differently.
Exactly. Yeah.
You
get the best stuff now.
Yeah. People glad to see you. You go out there and pick grapes during harvest time with some of the you know, you get to do some really cool stuff. You get like individual tastings in people's homes and barrel samples and things like that. So, I've enjoyed that networking with folks. So, so that's kind of how I got into wine, and that's kind of my journey. Now, the thing that got me into the wine industry business when I opened up my retail shop is that there's a retail store here we used to go to. I won't name the name. Well, actually, I will, because they've actually been pretty good to me. Tower. I've been to Tower. There's a guy there named John, and John and I, we kind of go back. He's still there, and you know, he's real personal, knows a lot about the business, and you know, so anyway, we would always go in there and we'd have these conversations. And on the way there, one time, my daughter Gabrielle, who actually works for me now,
I know Gabby very well.
Because you know, we're like every 2 weeks we make our trip to Tower, blah blah blah, and stock up. And she was like, "Oh, yeah, you guys are into this so much. Why don't you open your own business?" Like, okay, so like, yeah, why not? And so when Georgia Pacific got bought out by Koch Industries, I was already in the planning process of finding a location and that type of thing. And so that kind of put the nail in the stake, the nail in the coffin for me as far as getting out of corporate life. And so by April of 2006, I had opened the location, Halls of Fine Wines, over in Inman Park. And so now, as interesting, as crazy as this might sound, I was the first Black wine only shop in the city of Atlanta.
Yes.
I actually, this was 2006 when I got my permit to open. And so I then had the ordinance changed to allow for unlimited wine tasting in wine only shops, which at that point wasn't, because what was on the books, I don't know if you remember this, but they used to have tasting rooms in underground Atlanta back in the 80s.
I don't remember that. No.
Andy Young was the mayor. And so when they wrote the ordinance to allow that, they restricted that wine tastings specifically to underground Atlanta. And underground was off and on. Sometimes it was going, sometimes it wasn't. So but the old ordinance was still on the book. So if you had a wine only shop, believe it or not, you couldn't just do wine tastings. You were limited by permit for a year. You could only do one order. And so I spent my own money, went in there and got that changed. And by the time I closed the shop in 2010, you know, I was doing weekly wine tastings. I would do somewhere between 46 and 48 a year.
Wow.
And you know, on average, we were somewhere between 40 and 50 people would come to these things.
Wow.
So, they had gotten real. I was kind of really
wine guy.
Yeah. And so, but that's kind of how I got into the industry, you know. And then how I got into wine storage, like I said, it was always part of my strategic plan to get into, you know, to horizontally get into other aspects of the wine business. Well, some guys out of Seattle had two locations, one in Seattle and one at Portland, and they wanted to open a third here, and they were looking for somebody to partner with them. One of my friends worked for the Chamber of Commerce here in Atlanta, and for whatever reason, that phone call came into her that day, and they were looking for somebody in the wine industry, and she knew me. So she said, did you want to talk to these guys? I'm like, yeah, sure. So we talked, formed a partnership, opened that first location over on Maple Drive. Subsequently, I ended up buying those guys out in 2013. And, you know, again, here we are today. So kind of how I got into the industry. It's a little bit long-winded story, but, you know, there's other focal points to it. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into the game.
No, I love hearing that. I love hearing that story because, you know, it's like I said, it's not something that you know, people don't go into the wine business because they're looking to have this great income, although you can, but it's like you do it because you just really like wine.
Right.
You know, and like you started out saying about your experience in being in the Napa Valley, you know, just walking in a vineyard is an experience that you can never describe, because it's one of those that it's just this overwhelming feeling that comes over you. And my background is in science, so I love plants, I love the environment, I love soil, I love things like that.
Right.
So no, I totally get it. I love, like I said, I love hearing that story. So John, if let's shift our attention, our discussion to a little more about Buckhead Wine Cellars. Could you describe a little more of the services that you offer?
Sure.
The location?
Okay. So we offer refrigerated storage
Mm-hmm.
for enthusiasts, collectors, investors like yourself. We have importers, got about 10 of them here. So we got close to somewhere between 325 and 350 members. So it's a private club. We have an annual dues. And with that dues, you get access to the members room. If you want to have an event, we throw events. Pandemic's kind of put a kibosh on that, but
Yeah.
that's changing now, and we can kind of get back into that. But yeah, we let, like yourself, you can come and, if you want to do a tasting for folks, you can have a tasting, and I can invite the clientele here. We don't, we members don't, we do those events for free for members.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have charges and that kind of thing. And we limit it to the membership because some of the things that we do are really, really, really good. And so a lot of other people from the outside want to come in. It's like, nah, you know what? Membership has this privilege. And, if you're a member, you get, yeah, it's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that, yeah.
So the lockers range in size from the smallest we call case-wise. You can probably put about 7 to 9 cases in it. The largest locker, I got a locker that's got probably somewhere between 900 and 1,000 cases in it. Huge. And so, and everything in between, we have. And so, so we can accommodate everybody that's from the beginners or small collections or just looking for outside storage, or to everybody just want to be all in. They're living in high rises and townhomes. They just don't have any storage type of needs. We're a 24/7 access facility. So once you become a member, you get an access.
I always come on the weekends, right?
Yeah. So, for folks that are jonesing, they got to get access to their wine at 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday.
Right.
Have at it. Do you? And so, but we also receive shipments for our members.
Yes,
this year, last year, 2021, somewhere upward north about 1,500 pieces, and whether it's one bottle, full case, or whatever, we've received, and we put those in folks' lockers. We manage their inventory. We do that for people on a case-by-case basis. We manage the in and the outs of their inventory as it comes through the facility. We'll do an individual inventory for you if you want that. We'll do a valuation for you using the most recent 6 months of wine auction data in order to reference your price point of what your collection could reasonably sell for. Give you advice on who might be interested in that, whether it's an auction house or some individual collector looking for some things, because we tend to be a nexus where we connect all those people together. And so that happens a lot. Again, I talked about the proof of provenance, and then the logistics business, where we literally just go into people's homes and take care of them from the beginning to the end, and all the way to not just organizing their cellar and then inventorying their cellar. I mean, we do that in people's homes. We do it while they're here, and then organize their cellar once they have a cellar or put their collection back in a cellar. So, so those are kind of the primary things that we do here in this business. So I was kind of busy, working on something like that. And, as a matter of fact, before I talked to you today, I was talking to some guy who's a broker for freight haulers and they have a fleet of, or they have connections to refrigerated cargo holds. And
wow.
So, yeah. So, and so, yeah, you always kind of keep, there's like 2 or 3 I use right now, and then we're developing some other avenues
Mhm.
internally, as far as being able to ship, whether it's logistically. We own our own refrigerated truck, so
Mhm.
we do a good bit of that ourselves, but we try to keep our footprint within about 4 to 6 hours. So
Right.
we've been up to Louisville, Kentucky. We've been down to Jacksonville, Florida. Um, every now and then we'll go down to Palm Beach, but we try not to go that far because
Mhm.
that's a
Mhm.
hike,
Yeah.
unless we can get
Yeah.
multiple drops on a trip.
Mhm.
We do Birmingham, we go Charlotte, we go to Nashville. We got into Destin every now and again. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where, our sweet spot is. And so
Mhm.
first and
Right.
last mile, I'm dealing with those things. So those are the services we offer. That's kind of what we do. And, hopefully we'll be doing it for another 10 years. So, we never did get to celebrate our 10-year anniversary because I think our 10-year anniversary, yeah, was 2019 was the when the pandemic
He's been
started.
back the pandemic started.
So we never had a 10-year anniversary thing, and now we're in year 12. Maybe we'll do
Mhm.
one, maybe we'll do one this year or something. We'll see. But
Well, you
anyway, at
definitely
some
have
point
enough
we're gonna have
wine.
we're gonna have a big old party. I mean, I got one of those Jeroboams of champagne. Uh, yeah, it takes like 2, 3 guys to pour the thing. I mean, yeah,
Yes.
I've been planning for that for a minute. So, um, but I'm patient. We can wait. But yeah, everybody needs a reason to celebrate. So, but that's kind of what we do, and where I am in the business, and uh, I'll let you ask the next question or
Okay,
change it.
no, and again, it's one of those, it's important. I asked that question because I feel as though it's important for other wine entrepreneurs, not specifically minorities, women, African Americans, so forth, to know what goes into having a wine business, because your business is just one aspect of it. Like I said, everyone always sees that bottle on the table, but nobody understands how it gets there.
Right.
And it is a lot, and there's so much that happens from the time a seed is planted in the ground or a vine, and that grapevine is grown to the time is there to you. And it's a lot. There's a lot of hands in this. And I know for me, coming into the wine industry and coming into the import distributing aspect of it, I didn't even understand how many hands actually touch this wine as it goes through the process. And it has to be very carefully, methodically thought out, because you can lose a lot of money if you
Right.
have wine sitting up at a port and you don't have nobody to go pick it up,
Right.
or you can lose your whole cargo if it's sitting on or in a container that may not be refrigerated, and you go to an area where it's extremely cold, and
Right.
you can lose a whole cargo like that. And like we said, you know, wine's not cheap.
Oh
you know,
no.
it's
No, no,
not
no.
the cheapest drink out there.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I really wanted you to really hone in on your business, because you're very modest about what you said about other wine storage facility. John, you and I have been talking prior to me even starting my business. Um, and there's not a lot of wine storage areas in Georgia. There's not. So you would probably, and then if there were some, they're no longer in existence. And that speaks volumes to you as a business owner and how you do your business. And I can say, as a newbie coming into the industry, I appreciate you being there or being here. And I appreciate you being a mentor to me.
Thank you.
So, so with that being said, I do have one other question, John. And that question is, so as a wine business owner, what struggles that you face? what challenges you've overcome, and what lessons you've learned from being in this industry.
Okay. Well, see, there's two sides to that story. Well, there's the retail side, and then there's doing what I'm doing now. So you want to answer to both, or you just want the answer to the current situation?
I would want to say a combination of both, because I do understand that there's some differences with being a retailer versus being wine storage, but you kind of hinted towards that in your earlier response where you were talking about a lot of the funding and then a lot of the regulations. Right. So that goes on both sides, really.
Yeah.
Those examples kind of go on both sides.
Okay, well, let's start with the retail, since that was and then we'll conclude with what I'm doing currently. Mm-hmm. As a retailer, Georgia's kind of interesting case. It is. Yeah, and it still is, because what you realize is, when I got into the business, and I would say everybody should do their own due diligence. Understand, there's laws. And every state has different laws. So the repeal of prohibition basically told states every state can do what they want to do. So if you look at the extremes of the states, you got Pennsylvania, which actually all the liquor is state owned. The liquor stores are state owned in Pennsylvania. And you got California, Illinois, which basically pretty much do your thing. And then you got everybody else kind of in between. I would say Georgia is, not kind of down the middle. It's probably leaning more toward the Pennsylvania. The wholesalers here coming out of Prohibition wrote the law. So again, they wrote the law, so they were favorable back in the late 30s, early 40s. They were all favorable to them. So the craziness of it is that for retailers in this state, all wine purchases are COD. So it's cash on delivery. So as soon as that wine comes off the truck, there's no 210 net 30. There's no floating anything and letting the proceeds from that pay that thing. You better have the cash in your bank. There was some, by the time I got out of the industry, there were some distributors that basically would take your check and basically siphon that money directly out of your account that night. Right. So yeah, it would happen as soon as they got the truck back and made the drop and dropped off the checks, they were taking your money. And so, crazy. The interesting part was I had guys who tried to explain to me how that was advantageous to me. I said, well, if that's so advantageous to me, why aren't you doing it? Exactly. Yeah. Why? You guys writing a check to the winery when the truck comes and drops off, 4 pallets of wine from the winery. I'm like, come on. Everybody's doing terms these days. That's just craziness. So, so you gotta have, on the retail game, you gotta have working capital if you want to. Enough working capital, not just what you think you need, but just double it or triple it, in order to be able to kind of get into that game and actually do some damage. And then, you need to be nimble. I kind of look at it, as for all those out there who haven't read The Art of War, you probably need to go read it. But yeah, you're going to be into kind of guerrilla warfare for the most part. You are going to have to be quick, nimble, fast, understand what the niche is that you're playing in. Whether are you dealing with Italian wines? Are you dealing with French wines? Is it just old world wines? French, Italian, Spanish, that type of thing. Are you dealing in New World wines, which would be North America or Argentina or South Africa or that kind of thing. Who's your clientele? What's your audience based on? And it is about real estate. So, location is important. Where you are to the customer base that you serve, to the competition that's there and close. You want to be far enough away from the big Goliaths that they're not like cannibalizing your business. Yes. So yeah, so those are kind of things, so the legal hurdles and the financial hurdles, and then just the business in general hurdles if you're a retailer that you got to address, if you're a retailer here in the state of Georgia or in the Atlanta metro area in particular. So those are kind of things that, you want to address. In my business, I don't have to worry about any of those things. which is
Mhm.
good. You know, I tell people all the time, I'm somewhat of a glorified landlord. I pretty much just lease space. Yeah, I just lease space and collect rent.
Right.
That's a big part of what we do. And then, but you know, you got to maintain the facility. You got to, you know, I got cameras that people see. I got cameras that people don't see. I got infrared cameras that see in the dark. So your security, you know, to get into the main cellar, you got to go through 3 doors in
Yes,
order
you
to
do.
get to my main cellar. And so, you know, and then we have the pallet storage operation. We're our logistics business, and there's only 3 people that can get into that because you
Mhm.
know just loose pallets that are in there. And so, you know, so it takes a while to build up a degree of trust. And so, but once you have people's trust, then you know, think about it. I don't think I've ever done. You know, we sponsor like the High Museum wine auction, and we do a few things like that I've done, you know, for the last decade. But we really don't advertise because we're in such a niche, you know. But yet we've been able to find, you know, through word of mouth, and I won't say social media. My daughter, she's in that realm, and maybe that's a generational thing.
Yes.
Most of the clients that I've had over there, you know, they're in their 50s and whatnot, and they're not really on social media like that.
Right.
I know that's changing, which is why I made my daughter the social media kind of, you know,
Guru.
as we start to expand that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, you know what, this is out of my league. I'm not on Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't tweet. I'm just not, you know,
Right.
I don't
Right.
want to get into the whole thing about, you know, if you're doing all that kind of stuff, then you know, that's not a core part of the business, at least communicating to the people who communicating to the people who are my current constituents and members, and you know, soon to be members. So that we haven't found, because we did a little bit of that early on. It just wasn't cost effective for us. So we kind of stayed away from that. Now, yeah, I think there's a reason to get into it at some point, and I think we will, because that's just kind of where the future is, you know. But that's just not the right now. So so we don't really focus a lot of energy and time and money on that aspect of it. We're more into, you know, and I've told this to people too, that I throughout my corporate life and then just being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of great plans out there. Failures to execute is the number one reason most people don't, you know, achieve their goals. You know, it's in the execution. So you got to plan, you got to execute. It won't all go according to plan. But you do have one. So you got to have a roadmap in order to understand when you're on and off the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, and every now and then you are driving in the dark and you got to wing it, but you don't want to, you know, build your business around doing business like that. It's just not. It's not healthy and it's not good. And so, so yeah, that's kind of, you know, the caveat. There's no real barrier to entry in my business for the most part, but you know, when you're the 800-pound gorilla in the room and you're the first in the game,
Yes.
it says a lot. It has very, you know, because it's a lot like banking. People don't, you know, once they come to trust you and they know you and they know, you know, how you run your facility and things of that nature, and they trust you because they're trusting you to store their luxury goods. And once you build that trust and that trust is out there, you know, as long as you maintain that trust, trying to pry business away from me, you know, over the years, you know, I can count on one hand people that have left me because, you know, they went somewhere else, you know.
Right.
So our turnover is pretty low. And
Right.
so, you know, but yeah, it does take, you know, it's capital intent. Again, it's like the wine industry in general. To get in this business, you got to have staying power, you know, because you're gonna lose money probably the first 2, 3,
Yes.
2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully those losses are getting less and less, which is what you anticipate. You know, and then at some point, you know, like you said about the bottle, everybody sees the bottle when it gets to the table, but they don't understand is that you're an overnight success that was, you know, 15 years in the making.
Exactly.
So it took a while to get there, you know, and I'll leave you with that. Like, I'm in the process of writing a book because I get asked a lot of questions all the time. And so, a lot of questions and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? And someone told me a couple years ago, I said, I'm about 50% there. trying to carve out some time to complete this thing over the next couple months. And because, I've kind of made a deadline of May 1st to get the thing done.
Good for you.
Yeah. And it basically talks about, let's just call it, the working title is Wine as an Investment. And the subtitle is it's a real estate play. Because when you really think about it, from an investment standpoint, you are buying the dirt. So location matters. And there's nuances and other things involved in that too. And I do all those things. I mean, I buy wine to drink. I buy wine to collect because I think it's, some of it's like I'm not going to drink it now, but I might drink it later, or I'll give it 5 years, things of that nature. And then I literally buy stuff that I am probably just going to sell.
Right.
I'm buying it as an investment. And so, it's getting on and so anyway, and that is something, hopefully when I get that together, after that's been released, maybe we can come back and revisit that, that book. But yeah, that's kind of my take on, the struggles that were faced in the retail, the struggles that are faced now. We talked about the beginning when it comes down to access to resources, as Black folks, people say, well, friends and family. Well, yeah, my friends and my family didn't have a whole lot of money. So, then what do you do? Well,
exactly.
I basically, when I got into my retail shop, I pretty much just liquidated my 401k.
Yes.
And so people want to know what that's like. Well, yeah, take all the money that you saved from your beginning of your corporate life to when you left.
Yeah,
it was a tidy sum of money. I won't get into the exact amount, but yeah, it was.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, and you roll the dice.
Right.
And with the shop, the recession got me. The math on that said, at the lowest point for me to get back to where I was in 2007 was going to take 7-8 years. And I was like,
right.
I was working. I'd already opened up the storage facility. I was working 80 hours a week, and it literally was killing me. And so I just got to the point where I was like, okay, my wife, she'd been badgering me, and but closing down something that's your baby, that you literally took your life savings and put into, is hard.
Yeah.
But the realization was that it wasn't going to make it, and I didn't, to get back to where I needed to be was going to take too long.
And too much time.
Too much time and definitely too much stress and just.
Yeah.
And so I saw the potential of the storage and figured, okay, well, I think I like the business model. I don't have to worry about who's coming to the door the next day. Like if nobody comes here today, we're fine.
You're fine. Yeah.
I remember sitting in the wine shop in 2009, in the middle of that thing. And I remember it was a Wednesday or a Thursday, and I had one person come in the shop the whole day.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Bottle of wine. So yeah, it was like, you could hear crickets chirp type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, when you've been on that side of the equation, you understand, my advice to folks is that seize the day when your opportunity comes. And many times you don't get 2 bites at the apple. So when it comes, you got to seize it and hold on for dear life, because literally your life depends on it.
Yeah.
So, and just go for it. When you go for it, commit and just stay with it.
Right.
So that's kind of the struggles that are faced. Where you are. Like I said, I've been on the losing side, and if you want to say currently I'm on the winning side of that equation. But yeah, it's been, but all that comes with the knowledge that you can make it happen. It just and you just got to find a way. I went to HBCU, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, and then that's where I got my undergrad degree in business, and then I got a master's at Atlanta University, which is now CAU. But the motto of both those places, I think, is just an HBCU motto, which is basically, if I can't find a way, I'll make one. That's just how you have to play it. If you can't find one, make one.
Right.
So in this industry, that's kind of what I did.
Yeah. And and John, with that, I commend you on that, because I remember a conversation you and I had, and when I was talking about, finally, getting into the business, and you said to me, if you don't do it, somebody else will. So it's up for the taking. So, and with that, I was like, then I need to be that person to do this.
Right. Yeah, be that, yeah. Just
be that person.
Be that person. Be that person. So, and it's hard, and it is not easy.
No.
I tell people if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It might look easy, but it never is.
It never is. Yeah, right. So, John, it has been a pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Trudy.
Absolutely. So, to our beloved viewers, we love to hear your thoughts on the chat regarding the topic. If you have any questions, please comment down below. You may also visit our website at www.pieimports.com. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.